Can't stop, won't stop. There's no stopping Bitcoin as it rips past $67,000 and flirts with all-time highs. Why is this bull run so significant and so relentless? Is it ETF demand reaching FOMO levels? Is it the amount of Bitcoin on exchanges reaching all-time lows? Or is it the simple fact that Bitcoin is demonetizing assets all around the globe? We actually run the numbers for you and build bearish, bullish, and hyper-bullish use cases for Bitcoin's price model over the next 20 years. You won't want to miss these price predictions. Also, as this bull market gets started, we make the case for why investing into altcoins is a losing game and why there is no second best. Welcome to the Monday, March 4th edition of the Bitcoin Daily Show. I'm Dante Cook, head of Swan Business. Here at Swan, we're on a mission to educate the world about Bitcoin. So please like this video and subscribe to the channel. It will help us teach more people about Bitcoin here on YouTube and cut through all the noise that's out there. And as always, if you have questions about Bitcoin, there's no bad questions out there. Please send us an email at daily@swanbitcoin.com. I personally read these emails and reply to everyone, and will do my best to help you along your Bitcoin journey. And with that, let's get into the show. Congratulations to Caitlin Clark, who broke the all-time record for points in an NCAA Division I basketball career.
And your new all-time NCAA leading scorer, Caitlin Clark.
We have never seen anything like her.
I know Higher by Creed is having its moment in the sun right now, but in that Nike commercial, you heard Outstanding by the Gap Band. Tell me that's not the best barbecue music ever. True or true? And no Caitlin Clark, but close, as Bitcoin approaches its all-time high, ripping past 65K, 66K, and past 67K, touching $67,400 in today's trading. As we approach all-time highs, it's important that we remember and go back through the receipts and pour out some for the homies that got it wrong along the way. I want to take a moment to pour out one for Peter Zihan.
There's no intrinsic value to this asset. And now it's starting to be priced appropriately. So it has a, what's Bitcoin at? 16,000? It has another 17,000 to go down.
Duh, really?
Oh, and our favorite friend of the show, Peter Schiff. According to this tweet, Peter's client is up exactly 1,400% since he recommended that they don't buy real Bitcoin in an IRA like Swan IRA, swan.com/IRA. Believe it or not, Bitcoin's price is only spent 2 days above the pricing levels where we're at now. And as we've mentioned before, everything we know that we've modeled about Bitcoin's price may be completely wrong. Bitcoin may be decoupling from the narrative that it needed the halving in order to reach all-time highs, as Bitcoin may reach all-time highs before the halving. In fact, it's almost 100% guaranteed that that's going to happen this time. And also, there's a narrative out there that Bitcoin only runs when interest rates are near 0% and there's nowhere else for money to go. Well, that's not exactly true. The Fed funds rate is at 5% right now. And as you can see from my hoodie, Bitcoin's going to the moon right now. As analyst Joe Consorti mentions right here, it could be because the amount of Bitcoin on exchanges is plummeting right now. Trick question. Do you know what will happen in November of 2034?
In November of 2034, 99% of all the Bitcoin will have been mined, and the last 1% comes out over the next 100 years.
The amount of Bitcoin that will have been mined at that point will be at 99%. And the next 1% of Bitcoin, it's going to take 100 years. We are in the golden era of the Bitcoin gold rush, if you will. Bitcoin's price could be going to the moon because the trading volumes of the ETFs continue to be staggering. The 10 Bitcoin ETFs virtually are a lock to have their second highest volume day ever. Or Bitcoin's price could be ripping because it's demonetizing hundreds of trillions of dollars of assets around the globe. Check out what Swan CIO Hafa Zaguri had to say on CNBC earlier this morning.
Bitcoin is in the process, I think, of demonetizing a lot of the big assets out there. I think everybody talks about gold as one of them, but it's not only gold. It's gold, real estate, stocks, right? And these are assets that are in other orders of magnitude of Bitcoin, right? If you just look at the gold, for example, we're talking about a $10 trillion in market cap, and Bitcoin is coming for gold. There's no question about that. I think to look at the performance of gold compared to Bitcoin, that says everything that you need to see. But it's not only going to be Bitcoin. As I said, I think the process of demonetization is going to happen. It's going to happen in most of these large asset classes. I think investors have for many decades been looking at ways to monetize, save their assets, and make sure that they're free from debasement. And Bitcoin, I think it's another alternative. I actually think it's the best alternative out there in the future.
And if you go to his Twitter handle, he makes a really good point about this. Is the S&P 500 really that superior to other indices around the world? Probably not. It's because it's become the de facto savings technology relative to other asset classes. And if that's the case, we're placing a monetary premium on the value of the S&P 500. But what if Bitcoin becomes the de facto savings technology? Well, let's model this out. Let's run the numbers. If Bitcoin were to capture 20% of the $320 trillion value of the real estate market over the next 20 years, maybe it's going to capture 25% of stocks and bonds over the next 20 years. Maybe it's going to capture 70% of gold's $10 trillion value over the next 7 years. Well, what would that do to Bitcoin's price? That's a conservative view. And based upon the Schrodinger model, the Bitcoin price would be over $622,000. If you're a little bit more bullish, it would be about $2.1 million. And if you're an uber bull, it would be $5.9 million per Bitcoin. Those are just the assumptions that we used, but you can plug in your own assumptions using the link in the show notes at thenakamotoportfolio.com. And you know why people are continuing to flee into Bitcoin from other assets? Well, it's because inflation continues to march higher globally. Oh, and speaking of real estate, distress in the commercial real estate market is now 480% higher than it was last February. The value of these depressed assets have not even come close to bottoming out. That's going to take another 2 to 3 years. And the market is seeming to reflect this in the stock price of regional banks. New York Community Bank is down over 70% this year alone. The clear and obvious savings choice is Bitcoin. But there are going to be platforms out there as the price continues to rip, like Coinbase, who are going to try to lure you away to other altcoins. Speaking of Coinbase, like we always continue to say, you know a bull market is about to begin when Coinbase's platform goes down and there are outages. And guess what? Coinbase's platform experienced, you guessed it, outages. And don't be worried. Their customer support wanted to ensure you that your Bitcoin is in fact safe with them. We want to use this tweet from Coinbase to continue to iterate self-custody. Work with a Bitcoin-only exchange that will allow you to exit the system and take self-custody with Bitcoin that you actually own and can verify for yourself. Use the link swan.com/daily for you to get started on your Bitcoin journey today. For those of you who watched our Thursday episode and said we cherry-picked altcoins to compare against Bitcoin and they're actually really making all-time highs versus Bitcoin, well, here are the major ones. We didn't cherry-pick them, as altcoins don't make all-time highs versus Bitcoin. These altcoins are not what they seem. You think that you're investing into freedom money, but you're really investing into tokenized securities whose monetary policies are made up by a bunch of nerds on Zoom, like this.
It sounds like the answer that I think you're alluding to, Mike, is actually changing the issuance curve of Ether, changing the monetary policy of Ether, which is a big deal.
Maybe, or capping. You could do it in all sorts of ways, right?
Right. I do want to say, I agree that issuance changes should not be taken lightly, but there is a historical precedent for this, which, like, these types of changes are continually something we're, like, kind of driving towards figuring out the ideal, and this whole idea of we don't want to overpay for security. We want to have the right amount of Ether backing up the proof of stake protocol. You could even imagine it going negative, right? So that obviously is a weird world. And this has actually happened in traditional finance, like Japan had a negative real interest rate.
And don't worry, your Ethereum token is a commodity. It's not a security. Well, maybe not. Check out this law ruling from a U.S. court judge. A U.S. district court just ruled that secondary sales of some crypto tokens on trading venues like Coinbase are securities transactions. The ruling appears to set the precedent that any token with a pre-mine granted to management satisfies the third prong of the Howey test. Ethereum and every other crypto token are securities. Will the SEC be consistent with the rules of the Howey test and by doing so, kill the ETH ETF that's expected to launch later this year? But Dante, isn't Bitcoin the same? No, Bitcoin is not crypto. And Bitcoin is actually a commodity. There's no CEOs, there's no management team, there's no pre-mined tokens. All 21 million coins are created that will ever be created. They are equally available to anyone to be mined and earned over time. That is why Bitcoin is so important. The benefits of these Web3 crypto tokens are that they are really fast. We don't need faster payments. We don't need tokenized tickets to concerts. What we need is a monetary savings technology that will allow people to escape from the fiat debasement that they're experiencing all across the world. Digital scarcity is the true innovation, but some people are just going to have to learn that the hard way, like our boy David Portnoy.
65,000 to Bitcoin. Bitcoin depresses me. Like I respect it. I don't know how I haven't made $1 billion on Bitcoin. And I've made nothing. I've lost. I'm the only guy. How do you lose on Bitcoin? How do you lose on Bitcoin? How do you be behind on Bitcoin? I am. I don't know how. How do you believe in Bitcoin and the Michael Saylor, the price you get, the price?
Learn what not to do by studying David. Or learn from people like Russell Okung, who invested half of his salary into Bitcoin, and now his bags are up over $33 million. As we near all-time highs, you'll be tempted to buy and invest and gamble and trade on many different things. But do the simple thing. Do the right thing. Buy Bitcoin. And with that, we're signing off for today. This is Dante Cook with Swan.com. Happy stacking.